professors, colleagues, future fellows, future teachers, anybody who's listening out there. My name is Alexandra Gordon. Many people know me as Alex, and the only appropriate thing to do is to conclude this entire program through video. I think at this point, you've heard and read enough of what I have to write, and I think now is the time for us to talk. Are you? In my teacher identity paper, I proposed that our society and our knowledge as educators and the system of education in this country is predicated on the idea that not only do binaries exist, regardless of the fact that already when we essentialize something into a binary, that's a social construction, and it's an act that legitimizes that social construction. But beyond that, those binaries in and of themselves serve to be in direct opposition of one another. For example, we have a shortage of teachers, and yet we can't get anybody to pass the new entrance exams. Or, at least in our cohort's experience, we had to take a bunch of exams, and they still didn't count, so we have to take more exams, but we have no way to use any of the various safety nets created because we came a little too late or a little too early for any of those things to actually impact us. People recognize that teachers are the ones that often get blamed for the issues that are prevalent across the system, and yet we have very little voice in regards to what kind of policies are enacted in our classrooms every day. Teaching has felt like one of the least empowering professions that I've ever had, and we are subsisting in a situation where nobody would want to do what we're doing. These alternate certification programs, the fellows program, to which of course I'm invariably grateful that I'm not $60,000 in debt in order to start at $55,000 a year in public service. I'm grateful for that, but these programs, they're not serving to really make any kind of the important social changes that need to be made. The students that attend the highest needs schools, special education students that are disproportionately black and male because we are trying to fit them into a curriculum that routinely subjugates and marginalizes them, people like me should not be their teachers. Maybe not at this point. I've always believed that as a teacher it was my due diligence as a white, privileged woman to be able to actively give something back to my community or other communities in which I do not belong, but I would like to make a difference because I am a New Yorker and I am an American, and maybe I didn't grow up in the projects, and maybe I grew up in a really nice county, but this is still our world that we share. And if I'm going to be a person that raises the rents in these high-need neighborhoods as a product of gentrification, I better dedicate myself to something that is a little less self-serving. But I shouldn't be there now. My biggest concern in the last 2 years is that, first of all, I was very lucky. I'd worked with students. I'd worked with students with disabilities. I had worked with students with emotional issues. And I also had experience working in high needs areas before I entered the Fellows Program. I was lucky. I also was a member of the Spring Classroom Apprenticeship, where I got to experience what the daily ins and outs of a school are in New York City without the burden of being a full-on classroom teacher. I was able to observe a variety of classrooms, not just during my preps, but all day long. I was able to see what teachers were effective and what teachers were not, and I was able to reflect on why. And I was doing that in a structured way. But that apprenticeship was only for a certain amount of people. That opportunity was limited. And then I was thrust into a classroom, but these kids needed more than me in my trying and failing stage, because even though I might be a middle school teacher for 2, 5, 10, 20, 50 years, my students are going to be 6th graders hopefully all but once. And in that year, they didn't need somebody who was just trying their best and barely making it above water. They needed the best. And the fact that we're able as a society to put these alternate certificate programs in place where inexperienced teachers are being thrown into the heart of the issue without the kinds of support necessary, being thrust into the same level of expectations as any tenured, experienced teacher, professional would, the people who are hurting are these children. The ineffectiveness of theory into practice is all but revealed in moments like this. Could we not be doing more for these kids than giving them a bunch of people who really, really, really want to make a change but have no idea the enormity of the system that they're up against? Why do you think it is that alternate certificate programs exist for high needs schools? Would more affluent neighborhoods be willing to have their children's sixth grade year be performed by an individual who has spent only a summer in the classroom and is attending full-time graduate school simultaneously to their teaching responsibilities? As the child of two parents who are extremely involved in their children's education, I can tell you for a fact that my parents would not have been thrilled to learn that a young inexperienced teacher in the middle of a teaching training program was teaching me my sixth grade year, or seventh or eighth. Not to mention that I wasn't in the midst of high-stakes testing during those times, where so much rides on the ability of a student to demonstrate mastery of work that, again, isn't even aligned to the standards that the teachers are trying to teach. We have a huge problem. We've created Band-Aids on festering wounds. I use that analogy to get into this program, and I'm going to continue to use that analogy in any other program that I attend. As much as I am so grateful and honored for the opportunity to be able to get into a classroom and try to make a difference, this isn't the way to go. Everything that LIU has perpetrated to us through our experiences, our classrooms, our readings, our projects, everything, has explored the ways in which our system is set up in order to maintain status quo and in the ways our society, both explicitly and implicitly, covets the institutionalized racism in which it's predicated on. These children deserve more than what we're giving to them. And all that this is serving to do is drive away dedicated, intelligent, educated people. Because when you make a profession like teaching so unbelievably unattractive, high hours, low wages, no voice, the blame for society's ailments, little institutionalized support, low resources, you name it, a lot of people are leaving. We're bleeding. TFA numbers are down. Fellows numbers are down. That we are entering a tumultuous phase in our country's history. Only way that I see that we can actually make institutional change is through education. But that form of education, that pluralistic, empathetic, inquiry-based type of knowledge production, can only be possible if the individuals and the groups agree that that is the goal that they have. We cannot perpetrate a pluralistic society if individuals do not think that pluralism is something that should be valued or privileged. We understand the ways in which certain forms of knowledge are privileged over others. We understand that people are often afraid of the work that pluralism would entail because it requires us to possibly subvert our own values, beliefs, and biases. In a world in which we are all trying to find our place, it is difficult to agree to make room for others, particularly if we are members of groups that have been marginalized. I thought that I was ready to be a teacher when I applied to this program. And I don't know how I feel now. This process helped me realize that we are at an extremely exciting time in regards to what teaching will mean in the future. And we have the potential to have a great say in what that means. We are up against major odds about what the future of teaching is going to be. Never more has it been more challenging to be a teacher, to remain a teacher, to contend with what a teacher means, or to even start the process of becoming a teacher. And in the meanwhile, we are losing sight of what education can be. Knowledge is power. We have to provide knowledge and construct knowledge in order to empower. The failings of our systems are becoming so apparent at this time. This process has helped me to fortify what I already believed about the necessity of becoming more politically involved with education. Teachers need their voices heard. We cannot simply be asked to reproduce the same structures of iniquity that we grew up with and are still grappling with today. This program rarely answered any of my questions and only brought up more, which is probably for the best. But I believe that the next steps are that we must band together and unite in our voices as teachers, and not necessarily behind our union, but really as teachers. Because bureaucracy is bureaucracy is bureaucracy, and if we are not afraid to stand up and advocate for ourselves and our students, I believe, and it may be excessively pessimistic, but I believe that we are in grave danger. We know that our country has failed in terms of education. What are we going to do, right? That was the question that was asked of me. Well, what are you going to do about it? So this is what I'm going to do about it. I am not going to be afraid to talk about race, class, gender, sexuality, religion, and forms of power, hegemony, and control in my classrooms. I'm going to require that my students find a way to find their voice, not just echo mine. I'm going to loudly assert myself, using my privilege as a white woman, as an educated woman, as a professional human being who can handle their way around an academic paper in order to make my voice heard, but not just my voice, but to find a way to be a platform for the voices that have been silenced for far too long. I'm going to create communities that value pluralism, that fundamentally support an individual's voice, whatever that voice sounds like, and then find a way for each of those individuals not only to have their own voice, but to believe that everyone else has a right to their voice too. I want to work for a way that we can agree to disagree and still move forward. I'm going to be loud, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to pick and choose my battles, but I am going to battle. I'm hopefully going to be able to be a voice for future teachers of America, and I would love the opportunity to be able to go in and work with other fellows to make this possible. I want to improve the ways in which teacher training happen in our society, and eventually I really want to take a look at these policies. But the thing is, I cannot have a say in the policies that define our profession and our institution without experiencing the needs on the ground. Too many people in charge forget what it is like in a classroom every day and the needs of these children and their families and the communities in which we serve. They allow their own knowledge and their own education and their own biases to overtake the actual narratives of the people that we are working with. It is not as important for me as another white woman as a teacher to talk about my beliefs about teaching. It is important to start disseminating other voices, and not just in theory, but in true, actual practice. We need to come together. We need to rise up. We need to demand that we take a really good look at what education reform means and consider its political implications across other institutions and the ways that the institutions create structures of power and social control. In order for our society to have a more diverse sense of itself, there needs to be more diversity. How do we get that diversity? We educate our students. How do we educate our students? We have knowledge that the way that education and the institution of schooling is played out in these communities is one that creates a lot of tension, and we have to be considerate to that attention. I have to be aware that I'm standing as a white woman in front of my students, and that will create difference, and that might create boundaries that I need to break through. And the only way that I can ever think of doing that, like the only way I can ever think of doing anything, is by being exactly who I am at all times. Trust me, it's not easy. I'm a difficult human. I don't know how to fix it. And I really wished I did. But I suppose I know that I entered this knowing it was broken and knowing it wouldn't be an easy fix. And now I know a little bit more about why and how. And now I just need to do the work. I'm excited and I'm scared. And it is extremely hard for me to believe it in the good in people anymore. Because we're just killing each other. But I know that I have a choice. I can choose to work to make my own life easier, or I can work to try to make the world a better place. So, you know I'm Jewish, right? There's this tenet in Judaism called Tikkun Olam, healing the world. So, I guess that's where I am. It'd be a lot easier to do anything else, right? That's my whole argument. It ain't easy to be a teacher. But I never liked easy. I want to thank the faculty at LIU for inspiring me, supporting me, and allowing me to express myself creatively in this process, thereby experimenting with representations of expression in higher education. I want to thank them for asking me to do things that I always wanted to do and didn't know how. I want to thank my fellows for being some of the most inspiring humans I've ever met, and my only hope is that somehow we can find a way to stay connected to one another. I want to thank my students who, I love you more than I thought I possibly ever could, who showed me kindness and compassion and forgiveness and unconditional love just by letting me get to know them. I'll never forget you. And I hope that whatever I do well and with integrity and with critical reflectiveness. And I hope that when I leave this world, it's better than when I entered it. I wish that all of you the best of luck, and let's make the revolution happen.